Okay. Good morning. Hello,
Morning.
everybody. My name is Dina Emser. I'm a lead trainer with the Positive Discipline Program, and I have my friend Ben Vandenberg with me this morning, and I'm going to let Ben introduce himself here in just a moment. But I've asked Ben to come on with me today to have a conversation about class meetings with a middle school group. So Ben, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've been teaching at Morton Junior High School, a smaller central Illinois school, a student population of about 500 students. My junior high school has 7th and 8th graders, and they all pool in from they consolidate from 4 elementary schools. So when I see them as 7th graders at the very beginning of the year, which I'm making plans for just last week, I have to keep in mind that they're all coming from 4 different locations and that they don't really all know each other, just yet. I've been teaching there for 14 years, and I have about 115 students. I have 5 preps of language arts. I used to have a speech class, but we have 8 periods in the day, and I'll meet my students in 5 periods throughout the day. So my class sizes are about 25 to 32 students, somewhere between there, and I'll meet them for about 50 minutes a day. I started using the classroom meeting after I took a professional development classes with Dina out of, was it Olivet? I think it was Olivet.
Oh, you mean the one you came to up in Chicago?
Yeah.
Adler University.
Oh, that was Adler. That's right, Adler University. Mm-hmm. And that was maybe 6 years ago now.
Okay.
The first one.
Okay.
And so that's when I started, just on a small scale. And like I've heard so many times before, you hear these big ideas and it's seemingly like overwhelming to start the big idea. So I just started it in the smallest way that I could. And that was about 5 years ago. And I've seen the program in my class grow to be really not a huge thing as far as time goes, but it is something that the students see as being an important part of class. And I wouldn't give it up now that I've developed it. I wouldn't pass on it for anything. So
Ben, when you think about, so first of all, do you see them both 7th and 8th graders or just 7th graders?
As students for my classroom, I see them just as 7th graders. But I do have that luxury of being able to see them in the building as an 8th grader. Yeah. They'll come back and visit me and we'll chat and stuff like that. So,
okay.
Right.
So first of all, I want to just say that when you were talking about those 7th graders coming from 4 elementary schools, I got an immediate memory hit of how scary that was to come to junior high the first day and just feel like there were so many people you didn't know. So I know that as a teacher who teaches 7th graders, how important it must be for kids to have somebody like you with whom they connect.
Right. And I teach with a team of teachers. I should have mentioned that. Team teaching is somewhat of not informal, a non-traditional way of teaching. We have a math, geography, science, and LA teacher. We've got these 4 teachers who all share the same student population.
Okay.
And so although there are about 250 7th graders, my 4 teachers, myself included, we'll have 115 of those kids.
Okay.
And then there's another team of teachers, of 7th grade teachers, who will have the other 115 or 120 kids. So when we get together for one of our meetings every day, not every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we'll get together. Myself, the geography, science, and math teacher, we have the opportunity then to talk about the students and where they're at, any concerns that we might have, and things of that nature. So
wow, that also sounds like a good approach.
Yeah, I'd love it if we could keep it for as long as we can. Yeah. And I've had it for 14 years. So
okay, cool. Well, I noticed that you said something about the big part of the program. It felt like it could be too much, but you tried to figure out a way to start small. Do you remember what that way was, and could you describe that process for us?
Sure. I wanted to introduce it to my class, I think as soon as I left your first professional development, and that was in December So it was after Christmas break that I started it, maybe like 5 years ago. And I thought that it'd be good if I put it at the back end of the week,
Okay.
after we had gone through, teachers have different ways of kind of chunking together their lesson plans, and I typically do it in 1 week sessions. So Fridays are the days that we would do any kind of formative assessments. And I thought, at the end of class on Friday, and let's start with maybe 10 minutes.
Okay.
We would all sit together on the same plane in a circle, and we would do, I think I just started with a circle of, I guess it was like thankfulness. We had a token, something to be able to pass around.
Yeah.
And it wasn't always thankfulness, but it would be an expression of some sort.
Yeah.
That is personal and maybe less academic. It could be tied together. So, we'll hand around this token, and then we'll say something that we're thankful for. The next week, it might be something that we're stressed out about, and the next week, it might be something that we're hopeful for. And then from there, we went to student questions and answers, where students are allowed to ask questions about school, about growing up, about being a sister, about being a brother, about moms and dads, and things like that. And then that's where we did like students helping students, and where I was able to lend some advice to some students who maybe had some questions. And that was from a box that we have in the classroom where they could put anonymous questions into.
Okay.
And so I would just go through that box. And then that's how we started out. And that was just about a 10-minute session on Fridays.
Okay.
A circle and do that.
Okay. So, I don't know if you remember this, but often I will say to teachers, if you just get kids in a circle and give one another compliments, that's a great way to start.
Mm-hmm.
So, but now, probably when you took that first training with me was probably before we even had, I'm guessing, the new manuals, the classroom manual and the leader's guide.
Probably.
In that classroom manual, and I know you took the second workshop with me a couple of years ago in Chicago.
Yeah.
Now there's more of a, a systematic approach to kind of, first we do the training and so forth for compliments. Do your kids actually do problem solving with one another now? Can they put a problem in the box?
Yes. Yeah. That's where that box is there for. We call it the questions box. It used to be called parking lot.
Uh-huh.
But it's called the questions box, and they're allowed to put anything in there from, like for example, a question that popped into my head was, I was friends with this other girl in elementary school, and we were really best friends, but things have kind of changed this year. She's hanging around with a group of people who I don't really want to hang around with, and she's giving me a hard time. How would you deal with it? So they're kind of like Dear Abby kinds of questions.
Yeah.
And so we get a chance to talk about what a person might do in those situations, always with the overarching premise that we want to be respectful to ourselves and respectful to others.
Okay.
And we have a response. So that'll curb any kids' silliness, because we get some of that time to time trying to get into the circle.
Yeah.
And so it's a chance for students to pass that token around, and any kid who wants to volunteer any input of what they think might be a possible solution, because there's never really one solution. So like, what do you think we could do to help this kid?
Yeah. So really then kids do get an opportunity to really start focusing on solutions.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if the kid happens to be one of the students in the circle who put the question in the question box, because I'll read questions from other classes in all of the classes.
Okay.
And if it happens to be that student, they're oftentimes anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
So they're in the circle, and I know, because I've seen them put that question in the box. So I know who it belongs to.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see them kind of storing some of their options. And sometimes the questions will develop over the course of a quarter. That same girl who was conflicted with her friend from elementary school, I'll see another question pop up with, I tried one of the solutions that were offered from the group, last time, and it didn't really go so well. And she kind of got mad. So what do I do now? I want to keep her as a friend, but I just don't want to hang out with the people she's hanging out with. So those kinds of things sometimes come back and through the course of the quarter can be resolved or at least helped. And that student then feels like they've got options. You know, the student who's asking the question has options and has people who are looking out for her well-being.
So I know that some of the questions that come up to me as the instructor of the positive discipline in the classroom workshops
Sure.
are around any issues that might get put into the box that you might feel would be either inappropriate to bring up to the group or challenging. Like, have you had a situation like that where you think, oh, wow, there's no way I can bring this one up, or, something
Sure.
like that, or maybe
Sure.
an anonymity situation where the kid's involved, or there's some sort of sensitivity with it?
Sure. Yes, I do screen the questions before we start our circle. And sometimes the questions could be silly and I just kind of discard those. But I also let all the kids know that ahead of time, that I'm only looking to try and field questions that could be exercised by the group.
Okay.
And if they're a question that's maybe too personal or a question that's too unrelated, then I'll likely discard those. I've never had an instance in which it's singled out a certain student,
Okay.
like to which the students could easily identify who it was about.
Okay.
And if the question were written in such a way, I would improvise my way to make it more general as I was reading it from the card.
Okay.
So as to try and help keep like that kid anonymous.
Okay. So then in your class meetings, do the kids have any role or any particular job to do?
Yeah, so that's I didn't start out with that. That's kind of where one of the pieces that I picked up later on. And I saw a significant buy-in from the students as being part of class. The list started off with maybe like 10 jobs, and it was just like a sign-up sheet.
Okay.
And as the token of thankfulness was passed one way, the clipboard was passed the other way.
Okay.
And then they were able to sign up for these jobs as we went around.
So you were at classroom jobs then?
Yeah, classroom jobs. Is that what you were referring to?
That's certainly. I was wondering if in the circle, in the mentoring part, did they have any particular roles to play there?
I wouldn't say anything in particular. Their role was to, we do talk a lot about respect and listening to other people. Mm-hmm. And so that's everybody's role is to listen. And that's where the token comes into play. Like if you got the token, you can talk. If not, eye contact, ear contact. Mm-hmm. Outside of that role, the idea is if you've got something on your mind that might be a solution or a way of handling that situation, just put your hand up and express your idea. So.
Okay. And Ben, over these years that you've done this, what do you see as the advantage?
The advantage is that, well, there's a lot of them, and it's not directly connected with academics. But it's connected with their emotions and their temperament and their sense of belonging at that school. And those things are directly connected with their academics. So through that, I'm able to but I see that they're more cooperative. I see that they can understand that there's somebody in the building who's interested in their well-being beyond my textbook. So, like, for example, like most schools, there's like a student of the month kind of thing. And quite often that student of the month is invited to a luncheon, and then they can bring a teacher. And now for the last 5 years or so, I've been invited to that luncheon with that student. And the students are oftentimes asked to talk about themselves and talk about their teacher. And at least 5 or 6 times now, that student has mentioned the classroom meeting when they're in front of this Rotary luncheon scenario. And to think of all the things that we cover in class, that they bring up the 15-minute session at the end of a Friday as being the thing that they're most appreciative of in my class, that stands out to me, that's something that some of these kids appreciate, that is part of their week. So
yeah. Is there something about your temperament, do you think, Ben, that is influential in making this a success in your class?
As to making it successful, I don't know. I think anybody could do it. I think it takes a willingness to be able to listen to the students on a level in which you see them as a person and not just a student. And so and I think we all can have that. But as a teacher, sometimes we forget about that because we see them as students first. Mm-hmm. So if we're able to kind of shed that light more on the fact that they're a person and their well-being, we talk about that emotional triangle, and make sure that they're feeling like they're protected and they belong at that school. I mean, it isn't that every teacher would be able to bring in their own personality into it. I think as long as you can express that you care for somebody, then you can do classroom meetings.
Okay. How do you manage yourself in terms of allowing the kids to kind of come up with the solutions and generate the ideas without maybe inserting your ideas too much?
I noticed that early on in the quarter, when I got to the point where I was doing it from quarter one, from the beginning of the year, being that the proposed solutions, students helping students solutions, they need to be respectful on both sides. So they need to be respectful to the individual who's submitted the question, and they need to be respectful to the people to which the question is written about. Because all these problems, these situations are personal situations. So there are times in which they need that reminder of respectfulness. Sure. And sometimes we need to go a little bit deeper as to, what does respectfulness look like? What does it sound like? But besides that, we kind of just try to keep it simple and stay with that core of respectfulness. And they need prompts in the first quarter and fewer prompts in the second quarter. And by the time the third quarter and the fourth quarter roll around, the kids are all doing a very good job of learning how to respond to those prompts. Okay. And I don't ever recall anything being inappropriate, to that nature. I think that that's because we center on that respectfulness.
Yes. Yeah. I love the idea of talking to them more about what does respect look like and what does respect sound like, because those really concrete examples help with concrete brains, right?
Right.
See it and visualize it and hear it better.
Right. Because they're familiar with the abstract terms and they're familiar with what that emotion might feel like, but for whatever reasons, they sometimes need a little bit of help understanding the concrete nature of what that is.
Exactly. In the real world. So is there anyone at the 8th grade level then that's kind of taking this idea forward in your school?
No, I am the only one.
Yeah.
I have had some teachers pick up classroom jobs though.
Okay, that's good.
So not the classroom meeting part, but there are teachers in the building that have picked up classroom jobs because they see that my students are kind of hungry and thirsty for those classroom jobs.
Yeah.
So they pick those up.
That's interesting.
So
do the kids ever come back and say, "Oh, Mr. V, we sure wish we could do this at the 8th grade"? Or
oh my gosh, every year. Yeah. They'll fondly remember, because as 8th graders, they'll come back to my classroom to visit and they'll say, "Hey, Mr. V, what's going on?" And then if it's on a Friday and I'm grabbing the clipboard and the token, and they'll be like, "Oh, classroom meetings. We don't do classroom meetings anymore as 8th graders." And I say, "Well, yeah, that time comes sooner or later, that you're going to not have classroom meetings, but I would love to have you back in a meeting, if we could someday. I'm glad you moved on to 8th grade though."
Yep. So Ben, if you could give any advice or encouragement to somebody who was thinking about doing this, what would you say?
I started with circle of questions. I would probably start with jobs, because jobs will, I think, immediately encourage a teacher to see that there's that this is one of those professional pieces that could be added to the classroom that makes the teacher's job easier, but also makes something for the students that they enjoy.
Okay.
I noticed that with the questions, some of the kids are more emotionally capable and ready to be able to handle the questions and the students helping students attempts. But the jobs, every kind of student wants a job.
Yeah.
At that age. And I don't know
Interesting.
where that starts, but every kid, when the clipboard runs out of jobs, and I've got more students than I do jobs, every single time they're like, oh man, next time you got to start going this way. and I got kids who are like, can I sit next to you? They're asking me, can I have the jobs board first?
Yeah.
And as a teacher, you've got so many jobs to do. Right. So that's one thing that would immediately get into the classroom and have a place that would stay. And it sounds, and I remember thinking that it sounded elementary in nature, classroom jobs, but depending on what kinds of jobs you need in your room, you could make this work for any classroom, even a high school classroom.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you think about the work of the classroom belongs to us, it doesn't just belong to me.
Right. And so we do, we talk about that. When I introduce and I use that springboard method to kind of give that to the students, and we brainstorm what the jobs will be for the year, and they nearly always end up whittling down to like the same list of 15, 16, 17 jobs. But sharing that responsibility and letting them know that this is something that I'm willing to give to you for you to take on as a responsibility. Because I think it's important for you to know that this is your classroom as well as it is mine.
So I know this is not exactly in the topic of positive discipline, but I know that you do a particular project with your kids every year called the Passion Project.
Yeah.
If you just take a couple of minutes at the end of our meeting now to kind of tell a little bit about the structure of that.
Oh my. If we've got just a little bit of time to talk about it, we can talk about that for a while.
For a while?
Yeah, that's another one that I started right around the same time, so about 5 years ago. And it's kind of generically called the Passion Project because it starts with one question, and it's what makes you happy? And so I'll stand in front of the class the week before the fourth quarter, and I've always done it in the fourth quarter, and I ask them that question. I say, what makes you happy? And I use my language arts curriculum to guide what I've come to call my pillars of the project. And so whatever it is that they're going to choose that's going to make them happy, they're going to do these things for that project. And it's going to take the full length of the fourth quarter to get there. They're going to have to write a motivational narrative, so which means they have to write a narrative, which is part of my state curriculum. Yep. They're going to have to write 2 research articles, so that's now 3 pillars. Each one is a research article response, so they're going to have to go onto the internet and find some sort of a research article that they're going to have to screen past me, and then they're going to have to respond to it by summarizing its main idea and its supporting elements. They're going to have to do that twice. They're going to have to do an interview, and so they're going to have to learn how to write questions and sentence varieties using an interview. And the interview should be with somebody who has a reputation in the field of whatever they're passionate about. The 5th one is a multimedia presentation. And so all of these other 4 pillars kind of build up that 5th piece, that 5th pillar. And that multimedia presentation has come to be a 10 to 12 minute presentation. And if you ask a student to stand in front of a class for 10 to 12 minutes in front of their peers, that's a lot of responsibility and stress for them. But these 4 other pillars lead them up to it. And the kids most oftentimes really, really love it because they've picked that project. They've picked that passion.
Okay. So them making the choice there, that's kind of the really internal.
That's the whole motivator, is them picking. So all in all, they end up making their own website, and they put all of these pillars into their website. So they're learning how to build a website, which has some, workplace applications to it. But it's a website on their passions. So it's come and gone with different names. We have Project Passion, Project Discovery, Passion Project.
Mhm.
But that's actually where I was just at Bradley University the other day teaching on the Passion Project for a professional development seminar.
That's awesome. So sharing that idea with other teachers.
Yeah, yeah. So at the end of a quarter, I've got 115 kids who each know how to make a website. And more importantly, who each know how to identify what their passion is and how to look further into it.
That's huge, man.
Yeah. I know adults who can't do that.
Exactly. And I coach many of them, by the way.
Yeah.
So then do the kids have an evening that they present the passion project?
Yeah. So they'll present it in class
Okay.
as part of their class presentation. That's right near the end of the school year. But we do have a project symposium is what we call it.
Okay.
So out of my 115 students, I'll end up handpicking maybe 50, 55 of those students.
Okay.
And my other 7th grade teacher on that other team, like I was mentioning teams earlier, she'll pick 55 students. And we'll create a kind of like a schedule. Well, it's a schedule for a 2-hour symposium open to the public.
Okay.
And so we'll schedule these kids into classrooms in the school, and the public will come in, mostly family members of the kids who are there to attend, but also, people who work at the bank, small business owners.
Yeah.
Their other studently friends, and the 8th graders will come back and watch. Some high school students will come back and check it out.
Mm.
And the 7th grade students end up becoming the teacher in the classroom, and everybody else becomes a student, and they sit in the desks. And so we give them about 15 minutes per kid, and each kid presents 1 to 2 times.
Okay.
Throughout the course of that 2-hour stretch. Yeah.
Well, those two things seemed kind of connected to me when I was thinking about the way that you share your power and the way you demonstrate respect for kids in the 7th grade in Morton, Illinois. And I wondered then, often I'll say, you may have heard me say this to teachers, I love to think about the work I do as improving the lives of young people.
Yeah.
I've noticed over the years that the job of teaching to me gets harder and harder. And so what I feel like I really like to do is improve the life of teachers so that they can stay in the classroom longer without getting burnt out.
Yeah.
When you think about, for you, when you lay your head on your pillow at night and you know that you're doing your Friday meetings, you're sharing responsibility with kids for classroom jobs, you're asking them the important questions for life, like what makes you happy?
Yeah.
What difference does that make in your life as a teacher?
How
does it feel?
Well, it feels good. I don't know exactly what kind of difference it makes, or if I could put a word to it, I guess. There is a difference now in my classroom and in the way that I see myself as a teacher, that I'm doing these two things, the classroom meeting and the passion project. And you're right, in a way they are kind of linked with each other as far as giving something up. Like I'm giving them a chance to own and take over control of what happens in class. And I think that means, well, it's something significant because I keep coming back to it. I keep doing it every year. So I do see that professionally it makes me feel, I guess, it makes me feel like a more complete teacher. And I'm not just translating a textbook for a company who wrote it or a state representative who picked the Common Core curriculum. So I actually feel like I'm in more control. So even though I'm giving away a lot of my options and my choices, I feel like these are choices that I'm making for my classroom. They benefit my students. They make my job in the classroom as a teacher easier too. So I'm not going to give them up. As long as I don't have to.
Yeah.
As long as I can keep them, I will.
Yeah. Yeah. I can just imagine, you saying, in a way I'm giving something up, but the way I've heard you talk feels to me like you're there, you're present all the time. It's like you've got your metaphorical hand on their back, kind of leading them in a direction if they're going the wrong way. So you're sharing your power, but you're really not.
No, well, no, because I'm making those choices. So that's it's my choice. Unlike a lot of things, and you mentioned in education, things in most professions, as you become more veteran in it, it seems to kind of taper off in difficulty, and that's why people sometimes move around or fall stale in their career path, and in other career paths they get more difficult, and then they jump overboard and they go to find something else. And teaching is kind of like one of those where it's ramping up and it's becoming more difficult to be a teacher in today's world. I think mostly because those options, those things that we have to do as teachers are coming from somewhere else. Yeah. They're coming from the state and they're coming from administration, even on a national level. But this is something that I'm choosing to incorporate into my room that is 15 to 20 minutes on a Friday, the classroom meeting.
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't say that I'm giving up my whole fourth quarter for the fourth quarter project because I'm still covering all of those pillars, but I am giving up that freedom for me to choose what they're going to read, and instead they choose. Yeah. So those are choices that I get to make. And I think once I started making those choices to do those projects in that way, the classroom meeting and Project Passion, I felt like I was back in control again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the word that comes to my mind is engagement. It's like you're engaged, because you're interested to find out what they're going to say and how they're going to react and what they're going to choose in their project. And they're engaged because they also have a lot of opportunity. I'm
engaged because I'm learning. I'm learning the people, and I learn so much in just their projects that they do.
Exactly.
I'm reminded and I'm learning of what it's like to be a teenager when they come through that questions circle, and how hungry they are to work, for those classroom jobs. You find me an adult who says that they're hungry to work, or they're interested in a passion, and you've got a really neat adult.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to make neat adults.
Well, I applaud your ability to make neat adults. And
Thank you.
I so appreciate you hanging out with me for this period of time today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. And I hope that we can get together soon and talk more about the specifics. But I really...
When you reached out to me and asked me to talk about it, it took me 10 minutes to reply and say, I'll talk about these things anytime.
I did notice I got a pretty speedy response.
Yeah.
Not only for me, but for other people who will be watching this. Thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you. And good luck to those out there who want to give it a try.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thanks a lot, Ben.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.